Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, it's a pleasure for me to be here at this interesting conference, and I thank the organizers very much for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to introduce to you what the DFG does to promote gender equality. What I will talk today about is, after introducing a bit the organization DFG to you, is what we do in our programs to promote gender equality in the German research system. I will also introduce to you about our future plans, future activities, what we have done, and certainly a bit also about what we have seen as results of our activities. So first of all, what is the DFG? The DFG is a non-governmental organization, an association under private law. In German, it's Verein. This is the organizational form like a football club. And we have members, certainly, but our members are not individuals, but our members are organizations. First of all, our members are the German universities, so we are also a member organization. This is quite important to understand how we set up our measures for gender equality. After the ministry, we are the largest funding organization in Germany for basic research. And we fund all branches of science and research. So the engineering sciences, the humanities, the social sciences, the life sciences, the natural science, and medicine. We also advise parliaments and public authorities on questions of research, on organization of research, structures of research. And within our statutes, we have laid down that we put special emphasis on promoting young researchers and also, as you see, on gender equality. This is quite new in our statutes. It was the latest point that was taken up some many years ago. So why we do implement gender measures? I think this kind of figure is well known to you in a similar way. This is taken from the Federal Bureau of Statistics for Germany, and it reflects the German situation. What you see, I hope you can see, in yellow is the number of doctorate holders in the German system, and it roughly comes close to nearly 50%. It means 50% of all doctoral holders in Germany are women. But if you look at the number of full professorships, it's the lowest line here, you see that after a number of years of huge efforts, it's roughly nearing close to 20%, which is not much and which does not reflect the potential that we have in Germany. So this was clearly one of the reasons that some years ago our General Assembly decided to put more efforts in promoting gender equality. So we were indeed, I guess, a catalyst in this area, a funding organization which put up measures and pressure on its members to improve the situation for female researchers. What we implemented some years ago were the so-called research-oriented standards on gender equality. That were standards that were launched in the General Assembly of the DFG some years ago, 2008. And the idea was to force the German universities to set up themselves standards concerning structural changes to promote gender equality and also staffing standards. And the basic idea was to have a kind of cascade model that the universities should themselves set goals how to improve the number of women in leading positions, and the increasing proportions is to be based on the number of women in the next lower standard, in the next lower qualification level. So the first thing the universities had to do is to collect numbers in their own institution, how high the number of female researchers on each level in the scientific career was at all. They didn't have those figures. So the very first pressure was to collect at all figures for all career levels. The second idea behind this initiative was to, on the one hand, put pressure on the universities, but on the other hand, make it voluntarily to set up the standards for their own institution. As we are a member organization, this decision had to be taken by the General Assembly. So it was important for us to do not act against the General Assembly, but with the General Assembly to launch this standard. To prepare this idea, we had set up a task force in advance to formulate the ideas of this standard, of this initiative. And for this purpose, we asked a number of rectors and presidents of universities from which we know they were open for this idea, and together with them we worked on this idea and laid the basis for that. As a second, we then went into the Association of the German Universities, the Hochschulrektorenkonferenz, and discussed the idea with them. And as a third step, then we went into our General Assembly and presented them this idea, which had already been carefully prepared at that time. So finally, the Members Association agreed on the idea of the research-oriented standards. And it agreed also on the idea that the German universities who wanted to participate in this initiative sent biannual reports to the DFG to describe what they had done in the meantime, what measures they had set up, and how successful they were. And we then asked the task force to have a look on these reports and classify the results into 4 levels, from 1 being the lowest to 4 being the highest. And we discussed then the results again in the General Assembly. We first had the idea to publish these reports, to make open what the situation in the individual universities was. Indeed, what we saw in the first reports were that around 10 universities were classified in level 4, the highest. Around 10 were classified in level 1, the lowest. And all others were in between, on level 2 and 3. And so the General Assembly of the members decided in the first round not to publish these reports in order not to blame the universities, not to blame themselves. So what we did instead, we advised them, we told them where they could improve their own standards, and what we saw 2 years later in 2011, that indeed much had improved. So it was then decided in 2011 by the Members' Assembly that we indeed now published reports, and you can find them on the individual universities' websites. In 2014, we changed the annual reporting system. What we now receive are annual reports that are more quantitative on figures, on the situation of female researchers at the university. And what we also did, and which had really a lot of effect, we put the classified level for promoting gender research as a criterion in the review of applications to the DFG, especially for the review of proposals for center grants or for huge collaborative applications. So it's certainly not the primary criterion. The primary criterion still is the quality of the research, but we actively ask during the reviewing process what kind of gender measures have you set up and how successful you are. And this indeed changed a lot of mindset, especially at the university presidents and rectors level. So what we are going to do now is we try to find out how effective were our measures, what has come out of our ideas, and we set up 2 years ago a study to monitor the effects of our our research-oriented gender equality, but also on the other measures we have established. And what the first results of this study are, what we can see already is that there is indeed a widespread implementation of gender measures at the German universities, and they have understood that gender equality is indeed a question of strategic leadership. This is indeed, I guess, the most important results that we can see. There is indeed, there has taken place a kind of change of mindset, which is the most valuable effect. What we up to now cannot see that the figures for female researchers in leading positions has risen to a proportion that would satisfy us. It has indeed risen. We clearly see that. But this is, I guess, not only due to the fact that DFG has put measures into the system, but there are a variety of other measures by politics, by the ministry, which happened at the same time. So it's hard to differentiate what kind of measure lead to what kind of results. So our measures are certainly one of the different causes, but not all. But we see indeed what we see from the study after having talked to a number of staff and a number of presidents and rectors and have taken a look into the case reports, that is indeed DFG's pressure which has led to this kind of change of mindset. In the next steps, we will now further develop these research standards. We will modernize them. First of all, we will suggest to the annual assembly in July to renew this voluntary commitment of the university to put pressure on promoting gender equality. That we indeed go on with qualitative reports every, let's say, 2 to 3 years. And we will, in every report, every 2 to 3 years, set up or give a special topic which should be in the focus of the report. And what will be in the focus of the report will be decided by the General Assembly. So the idea is that the universities could describe their successful but also their not successful measures to promote gender equality. And if we publish those reports again, there will be a process of peer learning, so that one institution can learn from the other what measures proved useful and what not. What we developed, what you might know, is at the same time we developed a toolbox. This is a platform where the universities can put in their measures for promoting gender equality, their successful measures. This platform is also contains its measures also in English language, so it can be looked upon by everybody worldwide. And this is a very useful instrument that we will prolong. So this is also a possibility how useful and successful measures can be distributed to the community so everyone can use it. Having a look in the future, we have further ideas which we will present to our General Assembly in July. We will set up a kind of qualitative gender equality strategy which deals with 4 levels. First, we have a look on our own instruments. We will have a look on our own processes. We will have a look at how we can promote career staff and staff development within the DFG programs, and how we could take more care for supporting better life-work balance within our programs. For the last 2 points, For the last 2 points, it is important to know that from the DFG funding, a part of the budget might be taken for such measures which in the funded programs, especially the center grants. They can indeed, for example, organize telework, homework for the researchers that are working within this center, and can can take the necessary budget from the DFG funds. With regard to the processes, we are now working on the question, how can we succeed in having more women participating in the review process? I will go on to this in a few moments. And what we also take care of is how to raise more awareness for the question of gender bias, stereotypes. You discussed this already. We have started to train the program directors in our head office, starting in my department, to be more aware of this problem. And what we plan at the next is to train the people in our elected review boards for the questions of implicit bias. Looking for our instrument, we try to have a closer look on our programs. We did that before, certainly in the past, but we want to do it more intensively, how we could improve our programs in order that they are more suitable for women researchers. One idea is that it's just basically prolong the funding periods. That would take a lot of pressure, especially from young women in certain career phases, if they could have, for example, 4 instead of 3 years funding. That is an idea we are discussing. However, we have to discuss this with the federal ministry and the individual states, which give the money to DFG, so we cannot decide this on our own. With regard to the number of women in the review process, at the moment we see that the number of women submitting applications to DFG is higher than the number of women that participate in the review process. So what we want to achieve is that there is a balanced ratio, that the number of women in the review process equals more or less a proportion of women who submit applications to DFG. That is not so easy as it might seem, because the number of women that refuse to participate in review protests is higher than the number of men. I think you know that there are various reasons why this happens. So what we also try is to attract more young researchers, more young female researchers to participate in review process, in order to make clear for them how important for their own career it is to be also a member of the reviewing panel, member of reviewing processes. What we have started already is that we set ourselves very challenging goals in order to reach a participation of women as high as 30% in all DFG committees. This is also not very easy. If you look at the engineering sciences, there are not that much women, and it's very, very hard to convince them to even take over another burden in another committee and another work. At the moment, the proportion of women in our committees is about 22%, which reflects the situation, the figures of the number of female professors in Germany. But nevertheless, we try to improve that situation and come up to 30% in all committees. What we do also is that we have annual monitoring reports inside our head office. So we monitor how many females submit applications to DFG, what is their success rate, how many women participate in reviewing processes. And we also present this data to the annual assembly, so we really make it public to our members how successful we are and where we will have to improve. What we do already is certainly that in all our programs, we give the opportunity to spend part of the budget for special support of female researchers, but not also for female researchers, but also for men who actively engage in their family duties. So if there is a need for a temporary replacement of the project leader, he or she for family reasons. We support funds for additional staff to support them so that their project can still go on. I mentioned already that we also allow that parts of the DFG funds are taken for career development measures, for example, in the center grants or the collaborative research funds, in order that the institutions struggle themselves for improving the situations. Quite another point is what we do is when assessing research proposals, we ask reviewer also to take care or have a close look on the curriculum vitae of the applicant and see whether he or she has children, especially young children, and take into account when asking how successful he or she was during the last years, whether there are children to be raised in addition. Because that might have an influence of the number of publications you have, certainly. And what we did as a second, for various reasons, not only for gender equality reasons some years ago, for DFG applications, we limited the number of publications in the publication list up to 10 items, because we want to make a clear demonstration quality goes before quantity, and it's not the intention of the DFG that you have as many as publications as possible, but you have publications with a high grade of content, and this is especially what we guess what helps female researchers. Yeah, coming to the conclusions, we have achieved, I guess, a number of successes. Still, we are very far away from having really gender equality. But what we also see that the efforts to achieve gender equality will not sustain by itself, but that we have to put on pressure again, that we have to make clear that this is still a topic that is very important for DFG as a funding organization. What we also have seen is that transparency about figures helps a lot, and that you need a variety of measures in order to be successful. You won't have easy success within 2 years with one measures, but you have to be you have to present a variety of measures, and that you have to take into account that it may take some years until you see the results. Yeah, this is so far the contribution DFG has given to promote gender equality, and I thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I guess we have some time left. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We do indeed have time for questions, and I believe we have a revolving mic. So we've got a volunteer. Terrific, up at the front. Could you please make sure you state your name and affiliation? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, because I have to speak directly into it. Thank you. I'm Jennifer Love from the University of British Columbia. I had done a sabbatical in Germany, so I'm a little bit familiar with the system and universities there. And it seems to me that the biggest impediment to getting women into academic positions in Germany, at least in my field, is that you have to change universities in order to be promoted. And there are various reasons why that would be a bigger impediment for women. And so if you don't even have numbers in those positions, talking about them getting funding becomes, I think, almost secondary. So there's a real structural problem, at least in my field. I don't know how universal that is. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess it's quite universal. It's not only in certain disciplines. What I said before is the highest effect I see concerning our standards is that indeed change of mindset has started. It has not yet led to complete change at all universities, certainly not. We still have not enough female research and not enough women at leading positions. What we see is that at universities where females are in leading positions, head of faculty or head of university, changes very actively take place. also because there are role models, certainly. This is another point. This is what very important. You see role models, yeah.
Okay, we do have time for another question. Is there, yes, we have another question right over there. Again, if you could please state your name and affiliation. Thank you.
My name is Margaret Bailey from the United States, Rochester Institute of Technology, and I'm an engineering professor. And I've gotten quite a bit of funding from the National Science Foundation in the past, so I'm comparing that with what you're talking about. I'm intrigued by the guidance that you're directing review committees to look at CVs to identify whether or not proposers may have had children, and to take that into consideration during the review process. And just wondering, how is it that you help the review members understand that circumstance? Do you have training for the review members? I'm trying to imagine a review panel in the United States in the NSF doing that. And first, I don't think our CVs reveal when we have children, typically. Maybe that's different in Germany. But I can't imagine those conversations happening around a review table within the National Science Foundation. So I'm just wondering, how is it that you set the stage for having productive dialogue in that area?
It's a duty of the program directors in my department to actively make this a point at the very beginning of the meeting of the review boards. And as I mentioned before, the questions of gender equality measures are a review criterion for the center grant, for collaborative or cooperative funding research. And reviewers learn that this really makes a point, and we really make it a point in the decision committees. In the decision committees, there are roughly 50% researchers and 50% are members of the federal ministry and the individual states. So these points are discussed in the committee, and they really may be the last point in the cascade of criterions to really, in the end, decide whether an application is funded or not. So over the time, it comes into mindset that we really make it a point, and we actively discuss it in the review panel when we have applications from women or also from younger researchers, even from men who have taken paternity leaves. We really make it a point, and we mentioned it, and if they discuss the results, the previous results, and maybe the publication, the track record, then really point to the fact that there are 1 or 2 or even more children to be raised, and this has to be taken into account. What is helpful indeed if you have at least 1 or 2 reviewers within the board who are on your side and support you in discussing that. And what we see over the time, that changes, so that the reflection within the reviewing board, this is an important point that has to be taken into account. It becomes better, and the awareness rises. It's a question of making the point in every session, and making it again and again, and making it over the years again and again. And we see indeed change of mindset.
I also saw in your slide, I thought it was interesting, if my understanding is correct, it's not just about babies, it's also about caring for the elderly.
Yes.
Which I thought was very interesting, because research has proven that, I mean, obviously, I was joking that I might hopefully still be alive by 2086, but the truth is babies that are born today are going to live longer and longer, and we have a big longevity issue, which means that there will be a lot of caring for the elderly, and research has shown that it's generally the woman that takes on that role. So I thought that was very interesting that you should have included that in
we do that indeed. And we started some years ago indeed that for the people who go abroad with fellowships, mostly to the US, they usually got a 2 years fellowship. And we invented some years ago, if they have children or if children are born during that time, we prolong the fellowship for another year. So we in all our programs, we took that into account and stated gender equality and family life work balance provokes costs, and it is allowed that that these costs are taken from DFG's budget.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. I'm happy that it sparked a debate.